I grew up in the lush neighborhoods of Kilimani. My dad, in aura, was the alpha male, both financially and in his masculinity. I remember his friends. They were all so loud. They had so many parties. Every other weekend, it was nyama choma and beer. There were always people coming to our house every other morning for handouts. Today was school fees, tomorrow was funerals. My dad was their superhero, always sorting everybody out, putting himself last, and always giving gems of advice to everybody he gave handouts to. My mother was as beautiful as Bougainvillea in the 90s. You remember how beautiful it was? My mom was the glue that held our home together. I just remember her smile. I remember her dresses. I remember the beautiful home we had. The smell of pancakes, the smell of sausages, cartoons in the morning. It was what many would consider privilege. My sister and I were enrolled in a very competitive boarding school, both in price. Basically, it's just where the rich people took their kids to be programmed to pass national exams. All was fine until it wasn't. In the year 2000, my dad lost his job. He was the director of projects at a very well-known NGO, and their funding was just abruptly cut short. My mom was retrenched in the famous retrenchments of the Y2K era. So just like that, our household had no income. My mom came to pick my sister and I up from the boarding school we were in, and she came in a cab, which was very awkward because at the time, she always used to come to school to pick us up with my dad or a driver. Well, we got into the cab, and I could sense her mood was off. So when I inquired, she let us know that, okay, guys, your dad and I are both out of work, and we've had to do some things as a family to readjust to the situation. So we've had to move to a smaller house. So from Kilimani, we had moved to a smaller house in a place called Kamura. You see, the house was completely unfinished. I'm talking no ceiling, the walls were not painted, the floors were not done, the basic plumbing in the house was not done either. By this point, things were thick because we had sold all our electronics, but we didn't need them anyway. Our new house had no electricity, and all we had to use at night were kerosene lamps to be able to see to find our way around. We had an old radio, 9 battery, that we used to listen to news and listen to music. I fondly remember the smell of the firewood when my mom would boil githeri for what would be a week's menu of that delicacy. So my sister and I were out of school for at least a year because we couldn't afford to go to the private school we were going to, and my parents would not enroll us in the government schools of the surrounding area. A lot of my friends wanted to come and visit me, both from my past neighborhood and from my school. They just wanted to come and see where we lived. There was this new place that we lived in. Our cousins wanted to come and visit us. But I was embarrassed about the whole situation because I didn't want them to see us in that new low. You see, it's not like my parents were not trying to get a job or to get jobs at the time. In fact, more than once, my dad sent me to the post office with his CV. My mom sent me to the post office with her CV. I remember them writing them and compiling them in the house, and all the hope they put behind every stamp. All responses and replies came with, "We regret." And every time I opened a letter, and every time they opened a letter and saw the "we regret," it just crushed them a little bit, you know? At some point, they stopped trying. They stopped sending me to the post office anymore. Like, do you know how it feels to see your parents just give up? It was like the end. The icing on the cake to this whole thing was, I think in the year 2000, within a span of 6 months, my mom lost both her parents. She was broken. Like, we used to pray every evening as a family for God to get us out of that situation. And I just asked myself at that time, like, where is God? You know, where was God at that time when we were eating githeri every night? You know, when my grandparents died 6 months apart, when my parents were applying for these jobs and getting, "we regret to inform you," as all the responses, when me and my sister were out of school for an entire year. Things were so bad at the time. I literally watched my father slip away and give up. My mom held the fort. while my dad sat on the veranda the whole day, reading the Bible and talking to himself, wallowing in depression. I was angry. Where were my dad's friends? Where were all the guys he used to drink with and who used to buy him booze and who he used to buy booze? Where were all the relatives who used to come to our house? We had debt all over the neighborhood. We owed Mwangi's shop money. We owed this other shop money. We couldn't borrow anything from any shop anymore. That was rock bottom. After an entire year of being out of school, I was finally enrolled in a local primary school where I sat for my KCP exams. I did exceptionally well, given the conditions. I was called to a school called Upper Hill. And in Upper Hill, that's where I met Savara and Chimano, my Sauti Soul brothers. We started singing when we were 15 years old. I remember that's where I discovered my musical talent. When I opened my mouth to sing, I forgot that my house didn't have electricity. Singing in Sauti Soul took me physically and mentally into a space where I was really good at what I did, and it didn't matter what I had at home or what I was going through in my household. All those years of listening to radio and singing along to our 9-battery radio started to pay off. And to date, the bond I have with my Sauti Soul brothers is unbreakable. They continue to take me back to the redemption that I got at the time, to the redemption music gave me at the time. And as I face different trials and tribulations in my life, as I'm adulting and getting older, music still is my escape. Sauti Soul represents my escape. Sauti Soul represents the place I go when I don't want to deal with the world and what the world is throwing at me. Chimano, Savara, and Polycarp are smack at the center of this escape. My family's experience has done everything to mold me into the man I am today. It scarred me for life. It changed my relationship with money. You see, now, anything I get, I understand the need of delayed gratification. I save. Sometimes I give and I ask myself, or rather I'm reminded of my father giving and how when he needed, nobody came to give him. And I ask myself, am I ever going to be in that point where I need and nobody's giving me, yet I've given so much, even emotionally? It changed how I am in terms of how I spend. You're never going to hear a story of Bien popping bottles in a club on his own tab. That changed me completely. It changed how I am as a husband. I can't imagine Chiki looking at me, going through what my dad was going through at the time. I ran away from that every day. My discipline is to wake up in the morning and make sure Chiki will never have to see me through the lens of my mother's eyes. It changed my relationship with people. Are you here with me right now because I'm having it good? Are you going to be there when the storm comes? Are my friends really my friends? Or are they just a bunch of guys who are here for, the fun times? But even though we felt so hard, it left us with some very, very, very amazing epiphanies in a very, very long time. We had never sat down to have dinner as a family. And now, even though we were eating githeri, we were eating together. My dad was home on time because he didn't have any other place to be. We ate as a family. We prayed as a family. We knew our relatives better. The relatives who really cared about us came to visit us at the time. Came with handouts, came and held us down, came with encouragement. It's not always about someone giving you, something material, but they came with encouragement. They came with hope. We made new friends in our new neighborhood. I made new friends who knew me for the shack and who didn't care that Bien came from the shack. They just liked me and thought I was a really cool kid. That whole situation made me look at my mother different. You see, when I look at my mom, I understand the real meaning of in sickness and in health, for rich or for poor. Through all of that, she always reminded me, Alusa, brighter days are yet to come.